Got it. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, now I see it. Now I see, got it.
The recording has been begun. Thank you.
Okay, and I will get it over here too. Very good.
Okay, PWC meeting, take two. Accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting in a hybrid model, both virtually and in person. The Public Works Commission is conducting this meeting October 12th, 2022 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform and in person in accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued April 1st, 2020 and amended on May 7th. I ask that all Public Works Commissioners, town staff, and presenters activate their video and mute their microphone unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, in order to be recognized, please use the raise hand option in Zoom and use *9 by phone. If you are recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website if your Netflix account ends. I, David DeLong, hereby call this meeting to order. All commission votes will be taken by a roll call. We will.
Dave, can I make a correction?
Yes.
Because all the commissioners are present, we do not need to do roll call
I
votes.
just saw that,
Yeah.
right? So we're going to go right to review and approval of the minutes. I would like to see if there are any comments on the
I've
minutes.
got a couple of suggested changes. On page 2, on the D1 under the middle school, on the second paragraph, the proposed new middle school, which will replace the existing Sanborn and Peabody schools.
Mhm.
And on page 4, the very first line, I think there's a word. It says, however, this option was, I think we were not advanced. We need to put the word not in there.
So that on page 4,
So, very first line.
Because you were looking at reduction in parking spaces, even explore the utilization of porous asphalt. However, this option was not advanced, given sensitivity to water.
okay,
quality.
yes, correct, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I've got one more. On page 9, up on engineering, and Neck Hill Road, it wasn't regular paving, it was actually asphalt rubber.
Mhm.
The part of a Neck that goes up to the reservoir was done on regular paving.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
So those, I'm suggesting that those revisions be made to the minutes.
Is the procedure, does Anna catch those or?
Yeah, Anna will.
Anna is aware.
Yeah, is
She's
aware.
aware?
Yes, I have made those changes. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. So. you have,
Can we add behind my name that I left at 4:40 p.m.?
Okay. Anna, you catch that? Sven left meeting at 4:40. Where's that on the in the minutes?
Very first page.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
You were also remote,
I
right?
was remote, yes.
any other comments or questions? Okay.
I move that we approve the minutes of September 14th, 2022 as adjusted.
A second,
I second.
thank you.
This is an all in favor. You know,
What?
we're gonna be all in favor or yeah, opposed.
That's true, because we have everybody here. Are we all in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The minutes are unanimously passed and accepted. Review of the calendar, I believe, Alan, this is your.
Sure, yeah, just as you're getting familiar with this and Sven sort of new to the table, we try to identify those predictable items, and some are sort of seasonal and some are like coming up an appeal or a request that comes up. So we do our best to populate sort of the next coming month, and placeholders is subject to change, but this just gives a flavor of I think we're looking November, anticipate winter maintenance presentation. That's sort of an annual update for the commission. We will be looking at the enterprise budget. We will have a discussion on the general fund, but the enterprise are the water, sewer, solid waste recycling budgets. Those are within the realm of public works. We'll be looking at sort of early proposals for the 2023 roads program. And then we will also have a follow-up to the scenic roads regulatory review. We had some discussion and introduction last meeting. We're looking for some feedback from the planning board. They're revising their draft, and we'll have a more detailed discussion on sort of input from the commission for that meeting. So that's what's on the agenda plan for the next meeting. And then kind of looking out, we're dealing with town meeting kind of activities and that sort of thing.
Just for the information, I will be away in December.
Okay, December. Yeah.
Can I ask a technical question? Enterprise budget plan, just
Yes,
terminology.
Sure.
If I'm confused. What are the other terms that could go in front of budget plan?
Okay.
Capital budget plan, enterprise budget plan?
so we have general fund, which is tax supported. And those are, programs that are funded like highway grounds, engineering for the most part, at least within public works, parks and trees, highway grounds, cemetery. Cemetery is actually part enterprise. The enterprise is where we have ratepayers funded. So subscriptions and tags for solid waste recycling, water, sewer, user fees, they fund those programs. Because of that, the town sort of manages them in a different cycle. Ultimately, they all sort of funnel into town meeting for consideration, but they have in separate hearings. They have the FinCom, but they're separated for different reasons, where the towns can say, we got to look at the highway grounds engineering. At the same time, we're looking at police, fire, planning, recreation, that sort of thing.
What's the term that's used in front of the budget that is funded by taxes?
General fund, the general fund, yeah. And then the enterprise is where we actually are user, rate based.
It's on an account.
No, it's those are the basics of our kind of budget planning.
Okay, great. Okay, that's.
Yeah. On town meeting article review, there's articles probably throughout, or are we only?
We're not there yet, but that's when they'll be discussed.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
so somehow I get the impression that with the scenic roads thingy, there was.
So the scenic roads was a bylaw that was an article last year.
Yeah.
Now we're in a regulatory process, and they will go through the planning board with hearings and rates or and regulations adopted. Think they will. I'm not sure the mechanics of if they then get brought back to town meeting or not, but we'll get articles that we want to sponsor, things that are important to public works. And we'll also review those articles that relate to activities or interests we have. And we sort of have those discussions. We don't go through them all, but we will sort of flag those things that are.
But you see all and can flag things.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And everybody can, but our job is to try and do some of the homework and back work so we can present them and have a conversation, really familiarize you with these sorts of things are coming up, and whether controversial or not, we'll have those conversations.
Okay, any other questions on the calendar? Okay, can we move on then to item number 3, which is the first action item? Discussion, the sewer, 13B, commercial Commonwealth Ave sewer appeal.
Sure. So this is for many on the commission, this is going to be familiar. It deals with wastewater capacity. We have a plan for the town, a comprehensive wastewater master plan, and it provides some guidance on how we manage existing or available capacity or kind of reserve. The Public Works Commission, through policy, determined years ago that when there was a significant change in use of any parcel, they wanted to be involved with reviewing this. And a significant change at the time was 1,000 gallons a day. And basically, you're not really going to capture a residential, structure or something, but primarily commercial, larger users who are going to, exceed this 1,000-gallon threshold. So, and it's a vetting process that we sort of provided some guidance, at least in the memo, to the commission. And there's a series of criteria that we looked at to try and understand that, was it, first of all, did the request come where they had frontage to the sewer system? I mentioned that because recently you heard something from Christopher Heights as a proposed plan that doesn't have frontage and wasn't part of the plan. So that's a certain, the beginning screening for the commission to consider. You also have to look at the capacity. Where do we stand with our existing wastewater flow? And on a positive note, where our plan has been in place for over 20 years, we still meet our permit. We're still below, we haven't exceeded that threshold. So that's an important consideration. There's also sort of, does the project fit into the town's sort of master plan and interest? Because the wastewater constraint was identified in the early 2000s, but afterwards, there's been planning interests and community interests that have been identified through the planned, the planning board, plan production, housing plan production plan. We've had interest in seeing the residential accessory dwelling units realized in town. So we try to complement the available capacity with the town's vision, as well as, items that have been identified in some of the long-range plan and envision Concord. So these things factor in, and generally before someone comes to this commission for approval of a significant sewer allocation, they've gone through a lot of other vetting processes, whether it's the NRC, Board of Health, planning, zoning, all that. So this is a situation where this is a planned project that went through, it's in West Concord, 13B Commonwealth Avenue. It's currently an undeveloped parcel, but it's been in the radar for development in the Junction Village area. And it was almost even somewhat, I want to misrepresent it, but Patrick Cleary is one of the owners of the project. It was contemplated for development back when the Brookside Village development was occurring. It's also complementary to some of the vision that West Concord has had for mixed use and kind of density scale, that sort of thing. So it's gone through a vetting through the ZBA. And a few years ago, they came, because of the scale, to the Public Works Commission, and they got authorization, basically the screening, to say, we meet all the criteria that you folks would want to consider. And, we're looking to get, in order to move forward with our design and construction, we need a commitment. If we don't have a wastewater solution, we don't have a project. So they came in and basically had a concept that was vetted. We put the entire packet of information in for you to review. We don't intend to go through that entire packet. It was reviewed once. The issue here is we also include, anytime there's an allocation of capacity, a sunset. Because what you want to do is make sure it's a real project, because we are now reserving capacity for this. So there was a 1-year sunset where they needed to make, do something. I think it was like get a building permit, for instance, to demonstrate that it's a real project. We don't want to reserve it while others might be in line. So at this point in time, we were doing work over in West Concord. We were on the Com Ave area. We were working at all the utilities and working with property owners along that corridor to ensure that if we needed to, was there work they needed to take care of. And it was interesting, we identified as, you haven't put the infrastructure in on Com Ave, where do you stand? Because we're going to be paving this, and what we don't want to do is do a complete, complete street project, and then you come in a year later and we got 2 new trenches or so. So that started the conversation of, and well, where do you stand with the project? So Patrick Cleary, who is present, can give you a little bit of an update. But the reason he's here is the original approval expired. My understanding is, and Patrick can clarify, that there is no change in the plan. The only change is primarily the schedule. And I will let Patrick, if you're there. Patrick, can we hear you? Do you want to chime in?
Sure. How you doing? Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you. Yeah. So Patrick, it's your floor for just a few minutes to explain kind of where you are in the project and why you're here for this request.
Wonderful. So thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to appear before everyone tonight. So as Alan mentioned, this was a project that we brought through the planning board, the ZBA, and then we appeared before your commission in early, I think it was early 2021 when we got the approval for the sewer allotment. We, from that point on, were working towards getting under construction, and unfortunately, we ran into many of the challenges that are being experienced throughout the real estate industry and construction industry over the past couple of years, with just exploding construction costs, lack of availability for materials and labor. And we have not been able to move forward with the project. It was while we were working with Alan on the utilities and getting them stubbed into the property this past summer, when he mentioned it would be a good idea to get the approval that we received in 2021 really re-upped and extended for an additional year. Currently, we are, beating the bushes right now with our, general contractors to try to get pricing down and to try to move forward in the coming months. So that's really where we stand. I don't have a definitive schedule as of yet, but we are hoping that in the coming months we will be able to move forward with the project. There was also an additional request within the letter that was submitted, which, for the project in the rear at 50 Beharrell Street back in 2013, 2014, I believe it was, we worked with the Department of Public Works to phase in the payment schedule for the sewer allotment fee. For that project, it was determined reasonable to do 25% prior to receiving a building permit, and then paying the remaining 75% prior to receiving a certificate of occupancy. So we are hoping we might be able to, replicate that schedule for 13B as well.
Yeah, let me explain. The fee is $44 plus or minus per gallon Title V. So it's a significant fee. And the interest is to ensure that it's really collected before they are contributing wastewater to the system. So in order to try and be sort of development friendly, it's a matter of they can build it into their financials, but they don't have to come out with the money. The 25% is their down payment, and then once they get occupancy, then they're using that flow. So that's been done before, a model that we think is pretty reasonable. I'd also mention the only other difference, and that's really what's important, is there was a change in the ownership, Patrick?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So the original development team that built Brookside Square originally bought 13B Commonwealth Ave as part of that master plan to allow for access to go through 50 Beharrell, to go through 13B, then through 50 Beharrell in order to connect with the rear of the commuter rail and allow for I don't know if it's a secondary means of egress or access, or now if it's a primary means of egress and access to the commuter rail station. But as we were going through this process for design review, a number of things happened, and the result of which, long story short, I was able to buy my partners out of the 13B Commonwealth Ave property and project. And as Alan says, there was a change of ownership, even though one of the owners stayed in. So.
Yep. Mhm.
So that's,
Any questions about, yes, please.
One, just a quick question, more clarification, but I know we saw this before and approved it, so I don't see any issue with it. And this may have been in the first request and I missed it,
yeah,
but I'm just maybe more for educational purposes. It talks about submitting a water impact report with water conservation commitments. Is that over and above building code requirements? Does this Concord have its own?
yeah, so it's a good question, Jeff. We try to encourage, we don't have a stretch code, for instance, on, we do an electric, but not on water. And so this is our opportunity to educate and work early on. And this is what's important, where we can work with the architect at the time where they're in design mode to look at water efficiencies, wherever and it's site specific. So in this case, it's mixed use. So there is some residential, which is fairly easy, and standard appliances and things that we vet. And, I think as far as the bottom floor, there's an allowance, Patrick, I don't know specifically the use. The Board of Health reviews the area and the nature of use to determine its flow through Title V. We just look at the specifics, say, all right, if it's, this kind of business, what can you do for efficiencies? And so it allows us to have the conversation early. And, our interest is always, and even the owners, the more you can serve, the more you save down the road, and it's better for the town. So that's what that's about.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so how much capacity is left in general?
So we have a permit of 1.2 million gallons a day, rolling average. That's based on a monthly average that rolls over 12 months. And we are presently at about 1 million, Jeff? Million.
Actually, a little bit low just because of the dry weather we had throughout the summer.
Yeah.
I think it's closer to the 0.8 to 0.9,
Okay.
a little under 1 million, but that's unusual
Yeah.
due to how dry it's been with the drought.
And what would be average in a normal season?
Normally it would be in excess of 1 million.
Yeah. And we've been working with this 200,000 plus or minus for 20 years. And we spend money that we collect, part of the fee, on two things. One, we invest in I&I, and we use some of those funds to tighten the system. Systems originally constructed weren't intended to be so tight, but we're spending money to tighten it because every drop matters when it's a treatment cost. And then we also have reserve, and the intent is if and when we do exceed our permitted capacity, we're not starting from ground one to say, now what do? We have reserve with a plan where we can then start moving on design and some construction. And right now, included in the memo, there is a reserve of about 155,000 gallons a day that if we needed to construct, it's highly likely, there's no commitment till you get all permits in hand, but we did the preliminary hydrogeologic assessment over at the treatment facility, the sand beds. We identified an area we could put groundwater recharge if need be. Groundwater recharge would require denitrification, more sophisticated treatment. It would cost a lot of money, but we think we could do it. But we have a reserve that would cover a lot of that cost, if not all of it. And that's where the fee that Patrick would pay would go into that fund. The interest is not to hit the existing ratepayers with, not planning for that next investment. So that's really that buffer that we work with, and it really can be weather dependent. And, some of the program we can, improve is on the I&I.
Yes.
Yeah. One question for Patrick, and that would be the timing of this work. Alan mentioned that Commonwealth is going to be repaved fairly soon. I actually saw some utility trucks out digging some holes on the corner of 13B a week or two ago. So when would the hookup be?
So their investment right now, and it's sort of in anticipation of future development was to work with the town to install the infrastructure to the property line or up
Okay,
out of the right of way. So their construction will not have to go impact the road once we
Okay.
do it. So that was
so that was the work.
that was the
being done.
coordination that really started this conversation
Okay.
when we reached out to say, where are you with this project? Because we don't want to
Yeah.
leave you out and then
Yeah.
find, a year later, you're back and we didn't know it. So Patrick made the investment in anticipation that, it's real to them
Yeah.
enough to start spending some money on infrastructure.
Okay,
Okay,
Okay?
thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
I have a draft motion here. Is this need to be read?
Mhm.
Okay, who wants gold stars for reading a paragraph, and then we'll share the reading here. I need someone to read the first
All
paragraph
right.
to approve. Okay.
So we can split. I could do
Go-
the
go
first
ahead.
paragraph. You can do the
Go,
second.
Jeff, yeah,
Right, right.
there you go.
I make a motion to approve an increase in peak water sewer design flow of 2,643 gallons per day as requested by 13B WC Acquisitions LLC, owner of 13B Commonwealth Ave, and detailed within the Title V Sewer Review, number 2166, dated January 4th, 2021. This approval is issued with the understanding that aside from a change in ownership and project schedule, there has been no other substantive changes to this project, which was unanimously approved by the ZBA in 2020, and will continue to satisfy those conditions and recommendations included within the memorandum submitted to the Public Works Commission by the Public Works Director dated January 3rd, 2021, and updated on October 6th, 2022.
Thank you.
Nope, there's still more.
And it continues.
This approval shall remain in effect for a period not to exceed 1 year from the date of this approval, at which time a building permit must have been issued for the project or an extension of approval has been made in writing to and granted by the Public Works Commission. Furthermore, this approval shall establish a payment schedule for the associated sewer and improvement fee so that 25% of the fee be paid prior to receipt of a building permit and 75% be paid prior to the applicant's receipt of a certificate of occupancy.
Thank you.
Now I'm done.
Thank you. I need a second.
I second that.
Second that. Shall I take a roll call here? Can I have?
It's-
I was gonna say,
I think we're,
You're good with a regular
We're
standard
good.
vote, yeah, no roll call.
no, we don't need to do roll calls. Okay.
Yeah,
If we're all
if
Yeah,
you're all
okay,
here, yeah.
okay. All those in favor of this motion, signify by saying aye.
aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously.
Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you so much. Have a nice night.
Very
Thanks,
much.
Alan.
Thank you. Next items, CPC projects, letters of support.
Okay, so a little background on this one. There's a request in the packet for 2 different applications to the Concord Community Preservation Committee. That's for the CPA funding. Applications have been submitted. This is for work that will be done on town-owned land that is maintained through Public Works. So the applicants came and got sort of our signatures to help them advance the initiative. They also got the town manager's signature on those applications. And they're here before you to seek a letter of support. This all goes into the file and review, through the CPC to determine which project should, merit the town's, sort of support. With that said, I believe I have a couple of the kind of proponents, I will say. I'm looking, do we have? I see Tish Hopkins is in the audience. Tish is our cemetery sort of supervisor, Public Works. Tish, do you want to talk about and give a little introduction to the War Memorial? I think that was the one that you were sort of going to, or I see Beth Van Duzer as well, but I think Tish, you're prepared. Is that right, Aaron? Tish, are you there?
Yes, I am here. I'm
right.
somewhat prepared, and any specific questions may go to Beth, but yeah. Basically, this has to do with the Civil War Memorial that's on Monument Square, the large obelisk in the center of Monument Square. It was a grassroots kind of effort that started a number of years ago by a citizen and some school kids to add a name to the plaque that's on one side of the monument. There's currently 48 names of Civil War veterans who died as a result of the war, whether it be from injury or illness. We'd like to add a 49th soldier's name, George Dugan, Private George Dugan, who was the only Black man from Concord who enlisted in the Civil War and had been considered missing in action following his first battle at Fort Wagner. Because his status was missing in action and there was no proof that he had died, he wasn't eligible to be on the monument because you had to have died to be remembered on that monument. The plaque that's there is not the original. The original was put there in 1867. The plaque's been replaced twice, once in 1887 and once in 1915, in order to add names and to correct spelling errors and just they changed the order of the names at one point. So it's not the original plaque. The goal is to put his name on there now because in 1932, after both of those plaques had been replaced, we just found this out recently, but the government and the Army reclassified George Dugan as supposed killed. So the government now recognizes that he was killed at Battery Wagner. His body wasn't recovered, but he was killed there. So he is now eligible to be on the monument. So would like to add it. That was the first kind of thing that we looked at. Secondly, looking at the memorial, was placed there in 1867. No maintenance really has ever been done to it. It was repointed once in 1965. But if you go take a look, it's pretty dirty. The joints need to be repointed. There's some nails in some of the joints that were used for bunting for holidays that have created a lot of staining on the granite and in the joints. There's some cracking and there's some corrosion happening on the plaques themselves. There's 2 plaques that needs to be addressed. So, so the request is to do all of this, hopefully, right now, with fundraising efforts, and maybe some money from the CPC. So, hoping that Public Works Commission can support it. I don't know if you have a copy of the application, but the total amount that we're looking for currently is $165,000. The bid prices that we've gotten so far are only guaranteed for 5 or 6 weeks. Everything is just going up very quickly right now. So that's the current cost that we're kind of working with.
I think that's great, Tish. Thank you.
The applicant user who wrote the application is actually on here as well. And if you have any real specific questions that I don't know the answer to, I'm sure that she does.
Any commissioners have any questions for this?
Is there a probability that there are other soldiers missing in action and suddenly reclassified and showing up?
We don't anticipate that at all. That's been vetted. It was vetted in 1915 and looked at again recently. Beth has done a lot of research.
Okay.
Quick question.
Yes, please.
Just clarified. I heard you, but now I'm looking at the numbers again. What is you said you got some bids, but they're only good for 5 or 6 weeks. What was that dollar amount?
So I think that was the $35,000 for the plaque itself.
Yep.
The remaining work, the estimate is $130,000 for the pointing, cleaning, and restoration work that needs to be done. So the metalsmith company, I guess, only gave us a 5 to 6 week quote, and that was a while ago.
I'm just wondering if for both of these, similar to the stone wall, if we should add a 10% contingency.
I think, is there a contingency, Beth? Did you figure in a contingency?
The original bid for the plaque was 25,000, so I added 10 grand.
Okay, so you built in a contingency. Great.
Good.
Yeah.
How soon is the CPC likely to act on this request, given the time pressure around?
The
It'll be
schedule,
town meeting.
It'll be till town meeting.
yeah,
Okay, so
So
we're still waiting.
we're talking
six
We're
months.
talking months, yeah.
Yeah,
April 30th.
yeah, right,
the letters of support will be due by November 18th.
right. I just want to make sure that number, the 165, is a realistic number.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
in many of the proposals for the CPC, there is additional funding. So one of the questions that I would have is if the cost is greater than 165,000, do we have a sense of where the additional funds might come from?
Maybe Beth can speak to that.
We've been told there's about $70,000 somewhere in a budget somewhere in the town. They haven't actually told me where, that could be earmarked for this. We also received information about a grant that we can apply for $15,000. So we're going to try and apply for that if the committee meets in time. And then there's supposed to be some fundraising involved as well. So hopefully we'll have more. I mean, that's our goal.
Thank you.
From what I understand, this is a pretty, well, I wouldn't say popular, but favorable
Mhm.
application from what I've heard.
Okay. Any other questions? Since my name's going to be on this letter, I'm counting on you guys to protect me.
I abstain.
But-
I think this is important.
So do we vote on, are we going to vote on one, or are we voting on both
I think we
together?
vote on both.
Yeah,
We could do
So,
that, yeah. Unless there's a.
Is there anything to hear about the second one? About
Yes,
the-
I see Rod Rydell is available. Rod, can you hear us or can you speak to this issue on the
Stone walls.
stone walls in the cemetery?
Certainly, I'm happy to do so. You could, so Rod Rydell, 324 Main Street, and member of the cemetery committee. I worked very closely with Aaron and with Tish and with Justine on the preparation and the submission of this application for funding from the CPC. Alan, was the application, a copy of the application included in the briefing package?
Yes, it was. They've seen it. Yeah.
Well, if that is the case, then I don't think there's any need to review any of that with you. Except I will make a comment about the review that our application has received from the CPC itself. There were two reviews that the CPC conducted. One very early in September, about a week after we had the submission. And that was a site visit to the cemetery where Tish and I reviewed some examples of the stone walls that that were either in poor condition and required reconstruction or fair condition and required some repointing. And then the following week, there was a complete review at a CPC committee meeting where, again, Tish and I responded to questions concerning the application. And I think it's fair to say it was very favorably reviewed. One point, which I think the Public Works Commission and the Department of Public Works will find humorous and sort of, it's a way of life for people in public works. The application got extraordinary, from my perspective, extraordinary praise for its completeness, thoroughness, attention to detail, and clarity. And I must tell you all we did was follow the directions. So kudos to Tish and to Aaron and Justine and to sort of the gestalt of the Public Works group, because that's basically how you folks live every day. You just set up your directions and you follow them. So that's all the comments I have for you. If there's any questions, I'm happy to address them. And of course, Tish and Aaron are here to give you more expert feedback for any questions that you have.
Any questions from commissioners?
No.
I'd ask one simple one, which is, what is the cemetery fund? Because that's the other source of revenue here. What is the cemetery fund? Where does those funds come from? The cemetery
Aaron,
fund?
do you want to speak to the cemetery fund? Sort of,
The sale of cemetery lots.
Okay.
Aaron McCloskey is highway ground superintendent, just for the.
Yeah. Thank you. So, any other questions around this letter of support or the request for this letter of support? I need someone to read a draft motion. On the bottom.
I mean,
You're done.
I'm done.
Still hydrating.
Will you do it, Andrea? Thank you. Bottom page.
To authorize, I submit this motion to authorize the chair of the Public Works Commission to submit 2 letters of support to the Community Preservation Committee on behalf of the entire commission. One shall be for a stone wall restoration project within Sleepy Hollow Cemetery, Old Hill Burying Ground, and South Burying Ground in the sum of $340,000. And the other for the Civil War Soldiers Monument Conservation and Preservation Project in the sum of $165,000.
I second.
Thank you. Seconded by Jeff. All right, all those in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Passed unanimously.
Great.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great work.
Yeah.
Beth, thank you, Tish.
Yeah,
Thank you all. Now we move on to item number 3, general fund capital improvement plan. Mr. Cathcart.
All right, I'm going to share the screen. See how this works. And this was in the packet, but I'm just sort of bringing it up for conversation. So we did talk last meeting about some broad concepts of some changes in our presentation, and we identified some areas that we thought were sort of underrepresented in the past. But I will say that with the relatively new team in Public Works, we're building sort of our messaging to complement the programs that we have. And when we talk general fund, it's primarily, this is the capital side of things. We're in the process of developing our O&M budgets as we speak. But on the capital side, as the memo provides some overview, the town is interested in not just FY24. Historically, that's how we would look at our capital plans, but beyond 5 years, where there's some detail that we're providing and submit to the town manager's office. We call them green sheets, where there's some detail for the next 5 years. And they're also interested in the next 5 to 10 years as well. So we've actually been meeting with the townhouse to talk about some of these programs. And if you kind of get familiar with them, you'll see, unlike a new school, they're not once in a blue moon. This might be an annual kind of investment, with our roads program, with our stormwater management, with our rolling fleet and that sort of thing. So we've captured in the memo the high order of those needs for 25, but they translate for the most part, unless they're very specific, to future years out. And so we included a table in there, and we're going to sit down with the town manager next week to talk about Public Works needs, understanding that the town manager and FinCom need to balance it with all the other departments in town that also need capital funding. They've broken the budget into what they consider sort of cash on hand versus debt. And obviously they need to look at the levy capacity and everything with the town. Our interest and focus is, what does Public Works identify as needs? With our program, we'd like to say a lot of our investments are really just the infrastructure and assets of the community. We're not just limited to a building and then some service. We're actually investing in assets that are everywhere. So whether it's a road, stormwater system, lighting, traffic improvements, these are all things that we're responsible for. And rather than just sort of go into the minutia, I just thought we could sort of, I would include, Aaron McCloskey and Steve Dukran, town engineer, Aaron McCloskey, highway ground superintendent. Maybe you guys sort of come up here for the conversation. And I would also say Bob Hill, who's sitting in the back there, is our management analyst. But basically, Bob has been herding all the cats. He's the one who is sort of making sure the numbers are accurate, double checking things for us, and working, sort of direct. He has the bat line to the town manager's office as we have changes. So just an appreciation to Bob for kind of pulling this all together. He scripted the memo based on listening to the various department heads and division heads and kind of the need. So rather than walk you through, I think it'd just be better to maybe entertain some questions that you might have.
The first one, Alan, is
Yeah.
that future years.
Yeah.
Are they in 2024 dollars or are they your estimate of inflation?
So we've sort of had a roundtable on what does it mean to you? And I will say this, in this economy, it is so difficult to sort of project. However, talking with Aaron, for instance, on the fleet, you see we have a lot of assets that are, we call it a rolling stock, a lot of equipment on campus. Aaron, sort of want to speak to how you've been sort of trying to manage projections with an understanding that we know from the townhouse, and this is very important, they're looking more at order of magnitude than specifics. So just to be clear, you can put a percentage on, but $500,000 in year 4, whether it's 500 or 450 or 575, it's an order of magnitude that they need to start planning for. So the detail, it's important for us to know what the basis is. So as things change, we can track that. But Aaron, you go ahead.
Before you answer,
Yeah.
can I just interject a quick question, which is, can you clarify the purpose of our listening? What is it you need from us?
So we have the benefit of, when you look at the memo and you look at some of the numbers, you may see something that you just want clarification or understanding. We are going to go through a process. We're going to explain this budget in detail to the town manager. We will go to the FinCom and we hear questions. And so the opportunities of vetting, and you're just the first step. 2 things. One is to be generally aware of the magnitude of our asks and kind of why they're important. And you can get that from the memo. You can literally look at it. If people ask you, I'd like you to be somewhat familiar with it and at least know if you want to reference the memo to understand or pass them along to Steve or Aaron and myself for clarification. It's really your role as public works commissioners are, you kind of kick the tires a little bit. You ask us questions if things aren't clear. What do we need to do to clarify?
Okay.
And there's really no formal action at the end of this. It's awareness and help us with our messaging. And really, these are the community's assets that we're trying to
Okay,
advocate for.
thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So go back to that question on the escalators.
Well,
and how that-
I think
Okay.
you've answered it well enough. The next question I would have is, when you look at the amounts per year at the bottom of the line, of the bottom of the list, have you taken into account the fact that the town can't really recognize jumps that are significant, and therefore you've moved things around or you've delayed something to another year as a result of that, even though it would have been good to do it earlier?
Correct. Okay, so couple things. By seeing something beyond FY24, we allow the town manager and FinCom to understand there may be opportunities that year-to-year kind of planning doesn't fit. And let me give you an example. $3, $5, $6 million a year for pavement improvement, where you don't know until town meeting if the money's even available. And at town meeting, you then are going out to bid to get contractors to put competitive bids together and get this work done during the right construction season. These are some challenges that if you really look at the order of magnitude and the level of investment we're talking about, a consideration could be, do we go borrow? Do we understand this is a $15 million need over 5 years? Should we borrow it so we can then be more, do we have the borrowing capacity? What else does the town have on its radar? So we just look at public works. And if we have the borrowing capacity, maybe we could really leverage and let the engineering division do the plan, design, and construction in a way that really is efficient, more efficient than what we've done in the past. So that's the kind of information that we think it helps. Now, there's might be equipment, the rolling stock on, well, we have a service vehicle that has a 10-year life cycle. Well, can we keep it another year or two to try and fit it in? And we have to kind of look at our maintenance needs and the condition of the vehicle. And not every vehicle gets the same wear and tear. So Aaron does a lot of shuffling to figure out, all right, I can get another year out of this piece of equipment. So that's a way of modifying, and our equipment is not inexpensive. When you talk about the heavy equipment we have, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars of investment, which is part of, I will talk about a macro issue, which the town manager is aware of, and it's not new, is the campus, this facility. It's been identified as a need for many, many years of, we need to do something to do, protect and store our equipment. We have break rooms that are in garages, where, which is okay. But, when you look at sort of when we're trying to, sort of have the right facilities for the service and work we need to do, when we have people who are here 24/7 for extended periods of time during the winter, is the break room really the garage? And, these are things that we're looking at. And so we've also flagged that. That's on the town manager's budget, and she's already presented this in concept to the FinCom, because she's interested in the 5 to 10 to, tens of millions of dollars. This helps inform those discussions too. And so that's why they have this break point of, is it cash on hand? Is it under $100,000? Or is it over 100? And should we be looking at rolling this into a larger debt authorization? So that's the concept. And what we've done last year, and this is with both Steve and Aaron's kind of knowledge and experience, we are no longer bundling everything into all the wishes and dreams are in this bundle. You don't know what we're going to spend it on, but someone's going to be happy and someone's going to be unhappy.
Yeah.
And we can't really untangle that to explain what we did. And we don't, as staff, that really shouldn't be our role. So we've broken it into, programs that are very clear. And when we talk about, culvert bridge repairs, well, that's not a sidewalk over in West Concord. So, and that's what we've done so that we can help the community understand what the needs are. And our budget historically has been to repair or replace existing assets. Something we've learned through Envision Concord, and that was a very important exercise, is the town has greater aspirations than existing assets. So we have the problem of the existing assets aren't being repaired, replaced in a schedule they should be. And on top of that, we have new needs and interests that we want to expend resources towards. And so those are some of the things that we flagged, and we talked last meeting. Transportation. We have sort of put a number out there, and it's in the hundreds of thousands to millions over years. Transportation is not the pavement condition. Transportation is connectivity of town. How do we get West Concord connected to, Concord Center here? How do we get people in homes and residents to the commercial areas and efficiently? So that's transportation. And so for the first time this year, we're flagging it, but I can also tell you that part of this discussion last year where we talked about it resulted in the town manager supporting a senior transportation planner who resides in this building. That's a new position. So think of it as like the sustainability coordinator, which is a new position, because the town said we want to practice and walk and talk sustainable principles. With transportation, we had to flag, there is no coordinated effort on transportation. So Public Works is impacted by it. We know if there's new infrastructure, we're going to be involved with the design and construction, and we're also going to be involved with the maintenance. So we are going to have a seat at the table, but that's some of the discussion that the town needs to have to say, repair, replace existing, or expand and do it strategically. And so our budget is designed so that we can at least explain to people when we're spending money, which bin we're spending it and how to defend it. And we are going through, for instance, in the bridge culvert, we've done an assessment, and Steve sort of got a third party come in to look at 130 or so.
Even more, 165, I think, culverts.
165 culverts in town. And they're all kind of hidden until there's a problem. And then they're very visible. So the assessment is, all right, what's the existing condition? Then we can start putting a little bit more than just placeholders as far as what's the need. And we literally had a conversation today that we do think, and this is comments that we're starting to get from the town manager's office, we need a little more specificity with some of the asks, because if it's generic, if you have 19 parking lots and you don't put a name or face to any of them, well, they can wait. But when you put a name and face to it, well, oh, you're right, that parking lot's a problem, so we're starting to look at that. But that is what we're doing now with the needs assessment for all of these kind of bins. Have I characterized it? Like from.
Yeah. I would add, a key to all of this is what's first on the list there, just asset management. We really need to know what our assets are, the condition that they are in. And that will inform us as to what our needs are, and will give us a better set of numbers to develop our program. So.
And that's an example where we've shared that with the town manager's office. We've started the first draft, and she's come back to say, well, would that be integrated with other departments? And then she's talking to the CIO about, well, what are the other needs? And, would Public Works go off on a tangent, or is it going to be something that facilities could use or something like that? So those are the questions that we only put our piece of the pieces of the puzzle in, and then the town manager and FinCom will start looking at it more kind of holistically. So, yeah, so a lot of it starts with planning, but we really are looking forward to some, investments in some of the replacements, repair and replacement. And we'll talk about that, sort of a little bit more detail with a roads program update, for instance. But all these things are really, they are unique. If you look at them and you look at the memo, I even get confused occasionally. Steve, what do you mean by traffic improvements versus traffic signals? And there's a legitimate, we need to make sure our message is clear so people understand what we're talking about. A traffic improvement may be an intersection realignment, which is not a small project, but you identify conflicts. We've talked about Baker Ave and Main Street for many years. We haven't got that funded, and anybody who goes in that intersection knows there's a need. So we're sort of advocating for that. But as Steve reminded me, as well as the signals, the traffic signals are important, but it's not limited to that intersection. The signals are all interconnected, and they need their own project to evaluate the timing, schedule. And so this is what the engineers think about and look at, but these are all real. These are all real needs. And so that's why we have them kind of broken down to, these kind of bins. I'm sure there's someone else might come up with something similar, not exactly alike, but I think we're getting to the point of messaging and getting people familiar with these bins. So any questions you have, whether it's today, tomorrow, when you're looking at it, or you just call, we're here to answer that, because other people may have the same question. Our interest is to advocate for these areas that are under the responsibility of Public Works, and your ability, whether it's this year, this is the second time you've heard a little bit of this. Other people have never heard this, but last year we started moving the right direction. And our goal is to be consistent, predictable, and you go back to the plan and, work the plan. And if it gets modified, explain why.
Just to clarify, particularly for, I don't think you guys were here last year, what you said, this is new. What's the new? What is it we were
The
doing?
new is the multi-year.
Right.
That's very important, as well as the way we have broken it apart.
Okay.
Those are what's new. And we've added a few new ones from last year, for instance, transportation, because we were all relatively new to the dance when it came to Envision Concord. We didn't understand it, with new staff. And last year, the select board charged all departments to look at Envision and give us an update. For us, it was a realization, okay, didn't know this document existed. And then we looked into it and said, well, this tags Public Works with this, and this. We need to start, planning. But the problem we had is a lot of Envision is that high level kind of, really nice to have. And we're still dealing with, well, the roads, the drains, the conditions of existing assets need attention.
So from your perspective, is this enough? So do you need more to accelerate, let's say, the repair and replace on one end? And on the other end, do you need more for the Envision Concord?
Yes, so if you look at the, where we have transportation programs, see this line E15?
Yeah.
That's the beginning of the expansion side of things. The pedestrian and safety and bike improvements, where we're talking $600,000, $700,000. Those are for some improvements. So is it enough? It's probably, if we got fully funded, I think staff would be thrilled, but also challenged. There's a lot of work there, right? But
it's a good challenge.
he's up to it. And the reality, Sven, is we're not going to get the ask, and we need to be clear where it is we get the funding and where we don't, because there's lots of needs, and we hear about the needs. The aspiration is fun when you're in a group and talking. The needs are when you get a call from this resident on this property on that street, or with that, stormwater problem.
Yeah, and I would add on the equipment side, there's been a lot of deferred maintenance over the years, a deferred replacement, and we're working to catch up. So in the memo it showed our standard replacement cycle of the 10 years, and compared us, what our department standard is versus American Public Works Association standard. We're more fiscally conservative, if you will, and try to extend the life of vehicles beyond what EPW recommends. But if you were to look at the years of the vehicles, our fleet, we have not met that. The way that I've kind of redone the 5-year outlook for this year for the fleet has caught us up. If we were to hit the next 5 years, we're almost caught up to meeting that standard that we've established for ourselves. But to Alan's point, chances are probably we're not going to get fully funded. And if not, things will get deferred and we will be off the target replacement schedule. So is it enough on equipment? We'll always take more for equipment. We put our equipment to work. We look at a full operation. Everything is out the door. We have very few backup trucks, backup pieces of equipment if something were to go down. We only have right now one mechanic. We have one vacancy in our fleet. Department, even when we're fully staffed, they're working overtime. They're working to keep our equipment in the best condition possible and on the road as much of the time as possible. So I would say we're almost there. And I'd say in the next 5 to 6 years, hopefully we'll be there.
Please, Jim.
Couple of questions, and it can be quick answers.
Yeah. I'll let these guys answer because they've heard me enough.
Under parks and trees, we've got Doug White Field, which is big expenditure in 25. But then there's nothing after that. Is that because Parks has their own capital budget?
We don't have, so for the FY25 expenditure, that's the Doug White Field,
Right.
That's the turf replacement.
Right.
We don't have anything else planned as far as a capital improvement or investment in parks right now. beyond that.
I will say, we've had a conversation recently, again, with new staff and roles, responsibilities being kind of reimagined. The recreation department is relatively new.
Okay,
The interim deputy town manager is new. So we've got programs that don't have someone directly
okay,
charged and responsible. So we've actually started a conversation with the rec department, with the town manager's office, to talk about places like Giroux, White Pond.
Yep.
Common areas where we may maintain, but we don't necessarily get involved with the capital.
mhm,
We're started a conversation, including the schools, because there are some common needs and interests. For instance, the Doug White Field is in essence a part of the campus up at Concord Carlisle. However, the Willard School has tennis courts that are used by the neighborhood. So who's managing and planning for those sorts of things? That's school?
Yep.
Is that recreation? So we've started the conversation and we have a good working group. And, you know, it's nice because we've got in-house expertise, both when it comes to recreation. We have the assistant highway ground superintendent has a lot of experience working in campus with all sorts of recreation facilities. So we can add to the conversation, but we also know if there's maintenance needs, what's the impact going to be for public works, and are we being tagged or not? So that is just started that conversation about a month ago.
I understand that, and I mean, part of it, it's near and dear to me, because that's how I started my career, was in public parks. So I always know they never get enough money.
Yeah.
It might be good if we could come up with some numbers for the future years to plant the seed. And I assume we have an updated parks and open space.
So
Master
the
plan,
recreation
which could-
department is doing a study,
Right,
kind
They
of a
got
needs
funding last
assessment.
year, right, yeah.
Exactly. And so we're working with Anna McCune on that.
do we know the schedule? Like, will they have recommendations that we can plug into?
So I
this?
know that they, if you look at last year's capital plan, recreation tracked their own, I guess, set of assets separately.
Okay,
Like
okay.
the, I think the pool was captured in there. I think we talked about adjusting. There was numbers in here previously for like the splash pad. I think that through discussions has been included in a potential pool replacement. Should that be done?
Okay.
It's gonna be included with that project. So to Alan's point, we just started these conversations of how do we
Okay.
capture these and who is gonna be tracking capital improvements and projects. In our O&M budget under parks and trees,
Yep.
we do capture, you know, turf maintenance, rehabilitation, repairs for irrigation system, things like
Oh,
that.
okay,
But we
good.
don't have any planned as of right now, major renovation projects to any other open spaces. That's why nothing's in here for the next 4 years after Doug Whitefield.
Well, I guess my suggestion would be, it'd be good if we could get information and put something in that we know we can back up.
So, yeah, the last major project was the Emerson. So if you go to years back before, if I guess our 10 years at the town, there was money plugged in for Emerson
Yep.
project, and we just completed that project. That's why we
Yep.
we haven't had anything else since then.
Yep. And then you did Ride Out before that.
Right out, and that was through the town manager's office.
Yeah.
So that's where, with the new players,
Yeah.
we're trying to make sure that things aren't dropped because they're not orphaned.
And you brought up this campus.
That's
And
right.
there's big money in there for this.
Yep.
Nice, based on the dollar amount of 30 million, I'm assuming we're talking about a whole new
Mhm. Facilities,
physical plan here.
correct, yeah.
And then the last was on traffic improvements, which you kind of touched on. But these numbers go up and down year to year, so I'm assuming you already have projects in mind.
Yeah, so we built that tables with those projects. And so some years we'll have design only, and other years
Okay.
we'll construction, and then the tail end of construction will be a
Yeah.
lower number.
Got
That's
it.
what I would- Yeah.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Any other questions? Yeah, I'm gonna ask about staff.
Mhm.
Staff versus consultants.
Mhm.
So staff is busy now,
Mhm.
and this looks like more than what we're currently doing.
Mhm.
So what kind of thought process are you going through to figure out whether it's something that we need additional staff all the time, or if it's appropriate to use consultants, even though they might be more expensive, but there's an end to the timeline, if you will, or the spending.
See, I'll start with a lot of these programs are under engineering. Do you want to speak to your
Engineering, yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah. When it comes to major projects, let's take, for instance, the Cambridge Turnpike project. That had the engineering work has to be done by a consultant. Now, an engineering staff person, the daily job goes from doing some engineering, managing projects, dealing with customers, residents, dealing with permits and contractors and so on. And so you cannot focus on any one project at any point in time. You hire a consultant, you give them a project. Those persons are going to sit at a desk and get that project done, that design done, and so on. So when it comes to bigger projects, we will have to rely on consultant.
I think this same on Aaron's side too. I mean,
To some degree,
the
depending on
the staff of what, what can be accomplished.
We've been, over the last few years, there has been some reorganization going on in the department and just putting, kind of with fresh eyes, roles and responsibilities where they kind of make more sense. Give me an example, the solid waste recycling program, which has been absorbed within Aaron's, purview, used to be standalone. And it was sort of one person with support. Now it's part of a division that has all sorts of resources, but it's got to be managed. Aaron's got to be managed. We have a environmental, coordinator who's doing day-to-day work. We're getting Aaron, we're looking to get a senior admin because these programs require a lot of support. Basically, Aaron needs someone who can almost fill in when he's unavailable. And so the senior admins are sort of stepping up. We're looking to do this with engineering as well. So Steve has someone who can deal with the administrative and managerial things, so the engineers can do the engineering work. And water sewer, new staff as well. Everybody's very busy. But I think, the budget includes an allowance for third-party support.
Okay.
So that's part of the
It's been
design.
built into what you've been thinking about.
It is. It doesn't mean the workload sort of gets any less, but it's third-party support is included in the capital. We've had an issue and we've sort of flagged it where the certain amount of capital planning and design that engineering division has done has been capitalized. So their operating budget is not as transparent as we think it should be, because if we have a budget of $2.2 million for roads, that's what it used to be, and 200,000 is going to engineering. It's not carried in the O&M budget because it's justifiable. They're doing a certain amount of capital design and planning and project management. Well, that 2.2 million that you thought was going into the roads is also getting, taking some operating or capital time from staff. So that's something we've flagged and identified. In fact, Bob, Hill, when he was struggling to figure out, how are all these numbers adding up? He kind of flagged this, and this was news to us because we hadn't baked this cake. This has been in place for a while. So at least we understand that now, and we're having that conversation with the town manager's office to say, how do we accurately characterize where the cost centers are and how we fund them? So that was a discovery, at least for this group recently.
Other questions, Andrea, Sven?
Okay, I've got one more.
Okay.
Pay-as-you-go items.
Mhm.
If you can't get it done by the end of the fiscal year, what happens? Like buying a
An
truck.
evolving paradigm. It's changed over time. Right now, it's likely it's lost. It goes back to the pay-as-you-go.
So carries, so if we're not able to, the
You're not
money,
gonna
the money
change
stays.
it,
Yeah, so
But
they,
you can use it for the same purpose.
correct,
Okay,
it stays.
so
It does say now. So hold, Bob, just remind me, because we just went through this transition where there are 3 levels.
Yeah.
Are we now, all the capital that's identified now is reserved?
As part of the capital planning task force process that
Yeah.
they went through, we now have a separate budget category for those pay-as-you-go capital items. For us internally, they're 03s. and the 03s, if we don't spend it this year, carry over to next year, we can
Okay.
spend them next
Fine.
year.
Yes.
We have to go through a year-end Mother May I
Sure.
process, but
Yeah.
it's pretty much guaranteed a by right carryover.
Okay,
And that's new.
that's important.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So for me, still, I come back to the thing, this is enough. Did you design these numbers with the 7 to 8% of the town's budget in mind? Or you said it's
No.
no, I have the magic wand and I throw everything?
They've asked
on
us
it
for
I
the
want?
numbers.
Yeah.
It's not our job to try and back them into.
Yeah, so that's,
These are the numbers that Engineering and Highway Grounds has volunteered.
okay.
You don't think it's enough?
I still think it's not enough.
You're, well, it's arguably not enough, but we'd be thrilled to have it. So, you know, and
I'm just concerned that you're getting cut back. And what's,
Yeah, I would say this for the equipment. I know that, you know, I talked to our vendors and trying to get some pricing for FY24 numbers, and they're still negotiating the contract. So all the purchase, to go back, all the vehicles that we purchase come off of either some type of a consortium or a state contract, right? So there's a few different vendors that we use for different vehicles. Talking to them and getting the pricing for next year, they can't commit to the numbers because the contract isn't in place. It was out to bid while our budget requests were due. And they gave me the best number they could. And they said, and the note at the bottom of the quotes was forecasted 10% increase for next year's contract. You know, that's what everything, we're already seeing that. And I think there was a vehicle that we had on for FY23 to replace, 22 to replace, excuse me, 23 to replace. We got the quote expired, price went up $15,000 and we had to find the money. So that's how quickly things change. Luckily, when I budget, I don't budget a trade-in value. We've seen over the last 3 years, trade-in values fluctuate significantly. You can go from a $500 scrap vehicle to $12,000 because there's no used vehicles on the market and somebody will take the rusted plow truck on the commercial sector, right? So, you know, everything that we trade in is gravy, if you will, but it's not it's not guaranteed. So, you know, I would say vehicles, if you look at the vehicles and see the numbers, you know, similar vehicles, if you look at the 5-year projections I provided, I went up 5% year over year for the same vehicle. It's probably not going to be enough. You probably see those numbers go up.
the other thing on the fleet we need to sort of flag is the town does talk about sustainable principles. They're looking for, there was a fleet electrification study, which is, you know, it sort of sets a guidance on how we would replace, you know, different pieces of equipment. So if there is a electric alternative that or option, that's the default. Now you look at the, you know, cost associated with that, it's fairly significant, but that's what the town would like to see because it has certain goals on carbon emissions and that sort of thing. So we try to keep true to that. The challenge in public works is short of the passenger vehicles, they really haven't, and there's these expectations and promises that we're going to get there, but the equipment that just requires a lot of power there's no alternative right now. We have gone into the hybrid market and we've replaced a lot of we've even downsized some of these, you know, 250s to, you know, 150 hybrid, where we can get away with that. It might not be as beefy as we'd like, but at least they make hybrid. So that's kind of consistent with the town's sort of, you know, vision. But those have real cost implications.
We have 2 electric vehicles on order. Expect the delivery of our first one any day now. The second one is on order and expect the delivery next year. So excited about that.
Great. Any other questions? Budget questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. For that, can we move on to the roads program update? Thank you.
I think we'll keep Steve Dukran up here. So basically, what we wanted to do is, as we are, you know, moving through, we had introduced back when we first talked about the FY23 roads program, implementing some alternative approaches to how we replace and repair and replace roads. And there was discussion and concepts of road preservation techniques with a different kind of mindset. And Steve, why don't I just let you sort of take us through this it's an update as far as, the good, bad, and ugly of what's been happening as we've gone through some of the preservation. So you want to take the lead?
Yeah, sure. So we call it a brief, and so I'm going to make it brief. So about a year ago, when we came, Alan mentioned, to talk about what we're going to do in the FY23 or the 2022 year program, we're going to make a couple of changes, and one was to introduce the preservation techniques that we hadn't done before, and we wanted to do it on a pilot basis. We had spoken with different towns, and they had a fair amount of success in doing preservation. And the idea behind preservation is to treat the roads that are fairly good and keep them good. So keeping good roads good, because if you were to just go back to the conventional methods of just waiting for the road to fail, where you'll either rehab them or rebuild them, you are spending a lot more money. So based on the cost factors we had at the time last year, it made sense to try these lower cost techniques and treat these roads. And so I have to go back to why we need to do that. When we did the pavement condition survey last year, 2021, we found that the average condition for the network had dropped from 75, I think it was, to 66, around those numbers in 3 years. And that to us was really a bad trend. We were going down. So we need to, how can we use the existing budget and an expectation of getting more money as we requested to get that money to work better for us, to maximize that budget. And the preservation methods would help us with that. And so I just, for example, if you use a preservation technique and you get 6 years life of that out of that technique, and you compare the cost with a mill and overlay that you'll get 12 years, you'll find that the cost for the mill and overlay is about 3, sometimes 4 times the cost of a preservation, but we will get half the life for. So it made sense. And the thought is you can try and preserve the same street a number of times before it really falls into a category of having to do a major repair. So anyway, so we went ahead and we have some photographs. And we prepared 3 different contracts for this year. And the first one should be called 2022 Roadway Improvement Phase 1, was for the application of the asphalt rubber chip seal. And so that was one contract. The second contract, which we called Phase 2, would be doing fog sealing, microsurfacing, and cold in place recycling. And the third contract would be more of the conventional type of work, which is the full depth reclamation or the mill and overlay. So these 3 contracts were put out for bid, and the Phase 1, the asphalt rubber, we had a good bid, and so we went into contract with that. The Phase 2, the microsurfacing and cold in place recycling, the price came in really high. The cold in place component, cold in place recycling component, was astronomically higher than expected. We couldn't get a contractor to lower the cost. And this all happened at a time when inflation was in double digits month after month. And so we couldn't get the cost down. So we dropped the cold in place recycling, and then we did just a contract for microsurfacing and fog sealing. And so we have 3 contracts in place. All of the streets that got the asphalt rubber, those streets that have been completed: Barrett's Mill Road, College Road, Nurse Knack Hill Road, Hildreth Lane, and Farmers Cliff Road. They all got the treatment, and
The asphalt rubber treatment.
the asphalt rubber treatment. In terms of the status of the, and condition of what's out there, no complaints on bad smell, neither on College Road. We had an initial couple of comments about the excess chips, but those apparently have gone away. Under Snack Hill, we still have some issues up there with the chips not, getting embedded in the asphalt rubber layer. And Farmers Cliff, no feedback on that or negative feedback. And Hildreth, which we had another application, a microsurfacing application to do. So whatever issues we had earlier on, the microsurfacing would help with dealing with those issues. So the conclusion is that roads that have enough traffic to help with rolling the chips in the layer, those will perform better, seen over on Bad Smell and College Road. Under Snack Hill apparently does not have the kind of daily traffic. It's a wider street, and even though the wheel path only covers a certain part of the street, so you will have those excess chips. We would like to continue to monitor the situation over the next, say, 6 months through the winter. Plowing is supposed to help with, smoothing the surface a little bit better. And then we evaluate at the end of that period and see if there's anything else that can be done. We included in the memo a petition that came from residents of Under Snack Hill Road. It's more of a letter talking about the issues that they're not satisfied with. And there's a separate issue on the Snack Hill Road that needs to be at least be examined, in a separate manner. Before the asphalt rubber chip seal was put down, there was some broken edges that, that probably could have been addressed prior to the asphalt rubber chip seal, but that wasn't done. So when the contractor put on the chip seal, they oversprayed over these edges, and like they would do in most cases. And so those edges appear to be as if they're roadway, but they're not. So the deformities are still there, and there are complaints that people are walking in those areas, and in some cases, hurting themselves. So we admit that there is an issue there, but it's not related to the treatment itself. It's a pre-existing condition. That's
What are
it.
you learning from this experience?
Well, the first thing is definitely it performs better where you have the vehicular traffic to help with getting the chips into the layer. We did talk to these other communities, as I mentioned, and they've had very good success with doing this, including neighborhood streets. But we're doing this as a pilot program, and as such, we will continue to evaluate these and see what the best locations are, what the better locations are for this application. So, and we're going to the microsurfacing that actually has been was done yesterday and today. Every street got two coatings. The streets are Prairie Road, Pleasant Street, Prairie Street, Pleasant Street, Wright Road. Hildreth got its microsurfacing layer, and I might be missing another one.
Prairie, right, Hildreth.
Jace?
Pleasant.
Yeah,
Right.
those are the four.
Those are the four. Yeah. And we were talking to the contractor yesterday. He says when it first goes down, it has an ugly state. So you look at it, you've seen all the markings and everything. But with a little bit of time and a little bit of traffic, it will smoothen out. And I have had some previous experience with microsurfacing myself, And that is a true statement that traffic too, like on asphalt rubber, does make it look better and feel better. And we're hoping that's the case here with these streets that we have just completed. Part of the program with the Microsoft is fog sealing. And I don't know if we have a photograph, I think we do. We did fog sealing on a portion of Lowell Road. And it's striped, it's completed, and it looks pretty good. Some fog sealing was done on Monument Street. It's not completed yet. They ran out of time last week, and they'll be back to complete that. The fog sealing is simply a spray of, like you do on your driveway with some of a commercial application. And that the thought behind that is to reduce or cover the existing pavement to prevent oxidation of the pavement by UV, the sun's UV. And that would give it a few more years of life. Again, preservation is to try and keep what is good, good. So the third contract, which is the conventional work, this is a photograph of some recent work that this could be Hubbard Street that we reconstructed through reclamation and then paved a layer of binder and a layer of top pavement. Obviously, you can tell that's a long drawn out process. It costs a lot. You have to do drainage work and all of that. And if we can prevent streets from getting to that point, we certainly will be ahead of the game. The contractor for this, for the third contract, Newport Construction, has Commonwealth Ave to be done. They will be out there tomorrow looking at some grading, the grades, so that they can plan to work out properly. I think we mentioned the last time we were here that we will not be doing any sidewalk work on Com Ave because of the unavailability of curb until probably next year. So our intention is to just get the road reclaimed and binder put down and get it ready for the winter. There's some drainage work to be done as well. This contractor also has a few more streets to be done, and they're doing the preparation work for those streets. And hopefully you can get all of those done prior to the end of this year. So that's the status of all the three contracts for this year. The streets that we pulled out from the cold in place recycling, those are the streets over in the Madison area, Madison Drive area. We have about just over a mile of streets to be done. We were trying to get Newport to do this work under a change order, but administratively we couldn't do that because of the size of the change order. So, and because of being this late in this year, that will be put off to next year. We will have to rebid that work for, reclamation or conventional pavement construction. So let me talk about next year. So we have engaged a consultant, speaking of consultants, to help us take a second look at our program, because with all these trials that we're doing and all of that, with rising costs, and things can change, because if certain materials aren't available, like for instance asphalt rubber, that cost can go up drastically. So a consultant is going to help us reevaluate the program. They'll do a random check on the pavement condition survey results. They'll look at our decision making in the program, which treatment we use for which street and which PCI range we want to use, and then work up a budget, a capital program for us, so that we can inform that spreadsheet that you saw before better from year to year, and maybe Sven, we can get a number that you're looking for. But that's where we are currently, and we're going to be putting together, hopefully for the November meeting, the 2023 program, that which streets are going to be done, and with the anticipated budget that we will get and the money that we have. So that's where we are.
Okay.
Any questions from the commissioners?
Do you feel you make compromise with respect to cost versus quality?
Well, the answer would be no, for sure. And we conventional programs will give you the best quality because you're getting a brand new pavement. And the average life of a pavement of reconstructed road is 20 years, depending on traffic. When you do a preservation, it's not new pavement, but it's supposed to bring up the pavement condition index for say. So say you're applying fog sealing on a road that has a PCI of 90. You're supposed to get a few percentage points higher when you do you add a fog seal. Now your deterioration of a pavement is pretty standard. It's not an exact science, but it has the same, it follows the same pattern all the time. It starts at 100, brand new road, goes down and flattish for a little bit, and it gets to a certain PCI and then it starts dropping quickly, right? So you get the best quality when you put brand new pavement, you get 100. I don't think you can ever put another kind of treatment to get 100, but you could always increase the condition index to a higher level and slow down that deterioration. That's the whole point about it. That's why I said if you apply a microsurfacing, for instance, and you get 6 years, that's 6 years of good service as opposed to letting it deteriorate within that 6 years to a point that you'll say, oh, my road is unacceptable. So a mix of preservation and conventional treatments will get us more roads at a better condition at any point in time.
And one that might be completely off, but it's just observation. I saw that the winter service on streets in Lincoln looks a little bit different than here. That instead of putting salt directly granular on the street, they're spraying kind of salt water the day before the snow. Is that anything that is helping the asphalt, or is different winter service kind of helping the extending life of a street, or hurting?
Yeah, we do brine too.
Yeah, so Aaron Foster, my ground superintendent, so the winter maintenance falls under my divisions. Maintenance plan, but so we apply brine, salt brine, and road salt. Each application, we apply application depending on the type of storm, the event, the weather. Salt brine can only be used in specific situations where you have a kind of a guaranteed winter precipitation event with no mixed precipitation ahead of that. It's cold weather conditions that are freezing from the start. We can brine days in advance of the storm because it takes multiple days to go all the brine around in town, and then during and after the snow event, we still apply road salt. So.
It doesn't affect quality.
Doesn't affect the quality of the road. You know, we make brine using the same road salt that we apply to the road. So, and most communities in our area in Massachusetts have very similar maintenance plans and approaches to winter maintenance.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
I'm going to sort of add, I said it's good, bad, and ugly. So Steve talked about the concepts, but we are piloting this. And I think one of the challenges we're seeing is when you don't have a road in this condition after treating it, the general public just says, I don't have that road. This microsurfacing, we've seen and observed its application over the last couple of days. It's challenging in that when there is traffic and people going about their daily business, pulling in and out of their driveway and that sort of thing. Think of it as if you were to do your driveway over, you would put yellow tape in front and the barrels and nobody park on the drive for the next 48 hours. Well, we're putting this down, and within a few hours, people are looking to go about their normal business. So we're running into some challenges that I think for me, I'm kind of a newbie at this. I'm taking note going, you know, is this dense area a good application or not? Can we control the conditions sufficiently? These are things that we're kind of learning because we haven't seen them firsthand. As Steve and his team have done, they've gone elsewhere to see the end product. And the challenge is the end product may not be realized for months because as the contractor who puts this down volunteers, there's an ugly space. And I even looked at it and I'm not as discerning as most. And I thought it looked pretty ugly and imperfect.
Yeah.
The question is, what is that wear like over time? Does it take weeks or months to, improve? Even the color is different. It goes down as kind of a brownish color. Does that change with, sunlight? And I don't know. We're going to find this out, but the application introduces some challenges that we're learning. The messaging on what's happening and when we do it, what should people expect? We're learning. The asphalt rubber, we've tried it in different locations for strategic reason. One, heavy traffic, almost, the Barrett's Mill main fair in town. A lot of people travel. College Road is sort of a connection between a neighborhood and a main road, a little narrower. And then you have an Ursnack Hill Road. All three look very different, same process. And why do they look different? Well, right now, apart from the edge of road, which I'm still trying to understand what and how we manage that, because there's some legitimate concerns about this process there. But all three look a little bit different. And in the eye of the beholder, on Barrett's Mill, when you're traveling at, 40, 35 miles an hour, whatever it is, what do you notice is very different than College Road, which is narrow. It's a little rustic and rural. It's got well-defined edges, which is very different than an Ursnack, which when you drive today, there's still pebbles being kicked up. And so the expectation is, well, is that going to resolve itself? And it's not going to be as quick. It's like a healing wound. Our interest is the long term, but I think the jury's out as far as success or not. And that's where we're going through some of those growing pains. In fact, I would say there's some, sort of members in the audience here you might want to hear from.
I was gonna do that and then say two things. One, I'm driving to finish this meeting at 6.
Okay,
Close
we can
after,
do that.
Just
Yep.
so everybody knows.
Yep.
And out of respect for everyone's time, those of you. And I would at this time like to invite any public comment or invite any public comment or either online or in person here. Anybody want to share, have any comments about anything? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Pam Howell, 668 Ursnack Hill Road. I wrote the letter to bring to your attention the pretty extreme dissatisfaction our neighborhood has with this road. I know I fell a couple of weeks ago, and last night I was walking with my dog and the leash got on my shin, and when I went to move my shin, I stepped down on the edge of the road. It wasn't flush to a driveway, the same as I said in the letter. Down I went. I do yoga 3 times a week for 20 years. I can stand on my head. I am not somebody who doesn't know how to walk. And I have never fallen in my neighborhood before. This is 2 times. I know my other neighbor, I don't know if you know, she fell and hurt her ribs. Are you aware of this? So another neighbor fell too. People just aren't we're all walking on our access roads now. This has really impacted the quality of our lives. I can no longer enjoy a walk with my dog. And that's why I moved to Ursnack Hill Road. I know College Road people are not happy with it either. I just don't think they're as organized. We have an association, so we know our neighbors in a different way. But I do have a couple of people from College Road on that list, and College Road is still a problem. And people don't walk College Road because they fear for their lives. Yeah, so those people usually walk up Ursnack Hill Road, which is how I know a few of them. You know, I hear that you're low on resources, like staff resources, and I question the judgment of trying new things at a time when the staff of the town is already overwhelmed with the job that we have. And I think this is going to cause more problems for the staff, not less. I'm hoping that there's some closer solution than waiting a year and having more of us fall and a problem for the town in that way. If the microsurfacing was favorable at Hildreth, could that be explored for a Nurse Neck Hill sooner than later? Even just the edges of the road where people are falling. I invite all of you to come and walk that neighborhood. You walk on it, the pebbles get stuck in your shoe. I used to dread getting to Temple Road. Last night, I couldn't wait because Temple Road was not touched. It's falling apart, but I don't fall on it. It's a poor solution for a neighborhood where people are walking. You've already covered that there are still pebbles and chips that come up in the car. The road is super noisy. And I think that's it. I'm here tonight on a beautiful day when I would be enjoying a walk, but I knew I couldn't enjoy a walk. So I came here to tell you in person what it's like for us.
Thank you.
And I would have been happy to wait 6 more years to have our road degrade. Instead, it was in one day. And I don't know how we can go back. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a
Yes,
question?
please.
Just so I understand, I haven't driven the road. What is the condition that's different now than what it was before that's causing people to trip? Physically, what's different?
Well, before it was regular pavement.
Right,
And they put the chip seal on it.
right,
So at the edge of the roads, they overshot so a Nurse Neck had an edge
Yep.
that was regular pavement, but they went over it. So they put the chip seal on the grass.
Yep.
And so that created this, I sent pictures and
Yep.
it creates this very uneven surface. So what's really a problem is that it can be flat for a little while. So you sort of get up ahead of steam walking, and then suddenly it just cuts down. So your ankle literally rolls off the side of the road.
so where did you walk before? Like on
Yeah, you
the,
walked on the edge of the road, but the edge was the same as the middle. It wasn't like a different uneven surface. So now I'm walking where there used to be grass, but it has the chip seal on top of grass.
right.
So
So what happens if you walk on the paved surface?
then you're walking in the middle of the road. And that's safer for the ankle perspective,
Right,
but you could get hit. And it's still, the chips are all in your shoes. Like if you go there and watch the dogs,
yeah,
the owners are walking on the road and the dogs are walking on the grass.
Yep.
And these are dogs I've seen for years. They've never done that before. There are kids, they won't ride their little bikes in the neighborhood, their little, it's really affected the quality of even seeing our neighbors.
thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Mark Howell. I also live at 668 Nurse Neck Hill Road. I might just, from the edge condition, there are probably several things that were contributing factors. One is it's a hill. And so there are various places where the runoff of water created some gouging. So it had a fairly inconsistent edge with a soft shoulder in many places and a harder shoulder in others. So when the material was applied, it was applied at all kinds of varying depths. When we went out there almost immediately afterwards, there were some places where it was an inch or even a couple of inches deep of the chips, and some places where it was, you could literally see the tar between the chips. So there was kind of an inconsistency about the way the edge was created. There is no clearly defined edge, and it's quite variable. Most people on a Nurse Neck Hill have driveways that either go rather quickly up or rather quickly down from the road surface. So it's a complex topography. And so in my opinion, it's likely that the contractor wasn't sufficiently careful about exactly how they were handling that complex topography when they applied it. I'm also deeply suspicious that the conditions that I just mentioned are not going to lead to relatively loose and inconsistent jipping. The center, area between the wheel tracks has got a lot of loose pavements on it. I believe that when it starts getting plowed, it's going to start falling apart almost immediately. So I was really pleased to hear that the jury's still out, because I'm suspicious about whether this is going to make it through even a single New England winter, really. But, we'll find out about that.
Thanks. Okay, thanks. Thank you, guys. Can we move on?
Sure, we can go to the director's report and we'll go through it in 10 minutes. I say that every time, but no, we're going to go very quickly through it. And let me share the screen. I think we will start with, here we go. All right, festive pumpkin. All right, we'll move on to engineering. Steve, if you could be very quick.
Very quick.
Yeah.
With most of our paving projects, you have to do all your handicap ramps, make them ADA compliant. So that's an example of what we're doing on Prairie Street. Crack sealing of the police and fire parking lot, we help them with that. Fog sealing on Lower Road I mentioned earlier. And this looks like, Covered Street, all done. Some striping being done today, crosswalks, stop bars, parking.
I will note, outstanding is the complete striping and or signing for the complete street project. We're doing what was pre-existing for stop and parking, and the jury is out as far as what needs to be done to make this a complete street for, cyclists, pedestrians, that sort of thing. And we're working with the neighborhood, and they understand that we're sort of in a pause before we sort of decide what the next step needs to be. So
there's, on that one, it's on one of the walkways, there's still a manhole that is about this lower than the walkway. And
On the sidewalk.
On the sidewalk. So I would encourage you to.
Yeah, I observed some of those myself, and I want to see if something can be done about those. Those are manholes, most of them are actually CMLPs. And they might have to do a further adjustment.
It's just similar to problems like she described. When you step into it, people can injure.
there's a sidewalk without the depression, right?
Yeah, this one is the right place. And,
Yes.
Slow Street parking lot, this is a picture before we striped it.
Aaron, you're up.
Also, highway ground superintendent, a couple of photos here. Ripley baseball field, we just recently did some field cleanup work out there, heavily used facility, park and tree crew. I call it an elite baseball field, used by youth baseball leagues. We get a lot of positive feedback from that. So what they're doing, there's a lot of manpower and maintenance to go into keeping it to that level. So this is we have a top-notch crew. One of the photos of their seasonal cleanups.
If you haven't had a chance, you just go take a look at the Ripley. It really is impressive. If you were a kid, you'd want to be, actually, you'd be an adult and want to play on that field. Yeah.
A couple of photos here. On the left is the tunnel on the Bruce Truman Rail Trail. We frequently have to repaint this because there's a lot of vandalism and graffiti that occurred in this tunnel, surprisingly. So this was like 2 weeks ago. We repainted it. It's probably already vandalized. We notified the police department when we received notifications, but this is kind of like a routine thing. I just wanted to highlight it. Comes up frequently in case you're down there and you see something. We're all over it as frequently as we can.
Excuse me, is that underneath Powder Mill Road? Okay, at the end of the trail.
That other photo was we're prepping prepping for plows. My target for our crew is every year we're ready for winter maintenance, October 15th in New England. It'll be sunny one day and snow the next. Now, obviously, we don't expect plowable snow this early in the season, but you could have a quick freeze up overnight, and if there's any moisture on the roadway, we'll have to come into a treatment operation. So we don't have enough storage capacity at this facility for all of our equipment. It's no surprise. So we spend hours and hours rotating equipment seasonally off-site to this location. So if you were to walk outside, if you encourage anybody actually to drive around the facility tonight, our target is October 15th. Coincidentally, the drop-off swap-off event is October 15th. So it's a huge impact from highway, grounds, and water and sewer operations. If you were to drive around, all of our equipment is stashed and compact like a Tetris game back in the south part of the facility. All the dumpsters are out front. So you'll see everything kind of stashed over there, but we're bringing it all back here this week. It takes almost a week to prepare for that event. Huge impact to our operations and productivity. But it's a good event for the town that's coming up this Saturday.
People love it.
Yeah, there's a flyer in the packet. So if you haven't signed up, sign up to close 10 a.m. Friday morning.
All right, thank you, Aaron. Jeff, sorry, you got 3 minutes, so a minute per slide.
Last 3 slides are water and sewer. First 2 of the 3 slides has to do with Nagar Pond. What you're looking at on the screen is the cove that leads to the intake and also the overflow dam. Last year, we put out to bid a project to replace the intake piping, and bids came in high. We ended up change ordering, negotiating with the contractor to something that became a reduced scope, which was phase 1, implying that phase 2 still had to be done to complete the entirety of the work. So working with environmental partners, our consultants, we put out to bid the phase 2 project. Bid documents were made available on Wednesday, the 21st of September. Following week, September 28th, we had a non-mandatory pre-bid site meeting that was actually well attended by prospective bidders. The week after that, or today, 2 weeks after that, today is the deadline for questions from prospective bidders on the project. And 1 week from today, we'll be receiving bids on the project. What's written into the contract documents is that the construction, the work has to be completed by or before May 1st of 2023. This slide, again, speaks to Nagar Pond. And this is a bromate notification. We had a exceedance violation. Bromate is a oxidized form of bromine. Bromide, like chloride, is the ion, which is soluble. So when that becomes oxidized, we use ozone, as we're all aware, up at the ponds when it leaves the pond and heads down to 2A. So ozonation is a very strong oxidant, and it oxidizes the bromide to form bromate. This is seasonally operated to offset high demand season, the summer months. So there's only a limited amount of time when this is actually operating. Based on how the regulations read, it looks at a rolling average of use, which we don't really feel is reflective of the chronic exposure and dose that customers would be actually receiving from this water. But this is this notification has gone out between today and tomorrow. All the customers will have received this notification.
And what's the bottom line on this? I mean, does this affect our drinking water or what?
Is it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it's a water quality standard through EPA, the Safe Drinking Water Act. There's a public notice requirements if you exceed a standard, and it depends on, this isn't an acute issue like a boil order. This is a chronic issue, 2 liters of water, 70 years, that kind of exposure. And if you really look at the exposure, a standard of 10 is what the standard is based on rolling average of over a year, but we only measure when we're in operation. So it's at about 10 or 11 when we're in operation. The rest of the year it's off, our levels are 0. So our actual average over a year is about 2.5, significantly less than the standard, but regulations are imperfect the way they're written,
Okay.
but this is a required notification. You should be aware that it's gone out. It's a mass mailing. It sort of has to fire, chapter verse of the regulations. So sort of an awareness. And then this, I guess, Jeff, is the most important right now with.
This final slide has to do with the Nifties permit, and Nifties is how regulators enforce the Clean Water Act that regulates both wastewater operations as well as MS4 and stormwater. The regulators issue out 5-year permits. In the early part of 2022, in February 2022, EPA noticed or issued out public notice that they'd be requesting comments on a draft general permit for medium-sized wastewater treatment facilities. And a medium-sized wastewater treatment facility is a plant that has a operating capacity of between 1 MGD and 5 MGD. And as we mentioned earlier tonight, and we've said many times, our existing permit is 1.2 MGD. So we fit within that grouping of potential POTWs across the state that could be regulated by this draft general permit. The reason the regulatory authorities do this is there are approximately 40 treatment plants across the state that would fall within this medium size, and they'd rather write one general permit that has a little bit of nuanced specifics to any given POTW rather than writing 40 individual permits just for their own level of effort. That's how they approach this. So the comments were due by before April 26th, and working together with our consultant Kleinfelder and also our contract ops contractor Woodard and Curran, we prepared comments on the draft general permit, and we submitted that on April 26th. We had a total of 9 comments, but really the main thing that's been on our minds for quite a long time is the capacity. It's a 1.2 MGD capacity written into the permit, and we're looking for some extra breathing room. It would help in terms of development and so forth. Long and short of it is for the capacity increase comment we had provided, EPA did acknowledge the comment we provided, but they did not accept the detailed arguments that the town had made in our comments, reverting to stated requirement that an anti-degradation analysis has to be conducted as a requisite condition to the town requesting increase in the permit effluent flow limit. So as a result of that, we're inclined to think and to pursue that a technical legal recourse may be the way that the town has to go on this in order to pursue a flow need and interest that the town has to expand the permitted capacity. And this is a modest capacity we're really seeking. It's between 10 and 15% increase above the existing permitted amount. On that front and on that note, it may not be in our best interest to actually pursue the participation in this draft general permit. We would have to submit a notice of intent to EPA indicating that we were going to pursue this. If we did do that, we would be issued a authorization letter from EPA, and including that would include a date that the coverage would begin under the final permit. If we chose not to go down that pathway, then there's a mechanism and a provision where we would have to request to be excluded from this draft general permit. And what that would likely mean is we'd be pursuing individual permitting, and we would in all likelihood have provisions in the negotiated permit that would allow for us to pursue this expansion.
I'm going to cut you off. The technicality here is the town has a compelling argument in case in a need. We've been making it for 20 years. We appealed this permit in 2013, got it all the way down to the Environmental Appeal Board down in DC, and they argued that we didn't have standing with capacity because we didn't request it in our renewal. So we requested it in our renewal. We think there's a lot of technicalities here. We think we can do the environmental protection that's really driven through the Clean Water Act and also serve the town's needs for being prudent with spending our money, but it may require legal, technical support versus design and construction costs that would not get us far, but be expensive. So that's kind of an update. It's important, the select board are interested, the town's interested in capacity, and we may even need to revisit our comprehensive wastewater master plan, which would be okay if the outcome would be a case, an argument that would allow us to increase our capacity and reallocate what we've, sort of set aside in the
How
past.
much time do you have to make that decision?
A month or two.
Well, if we chose not to be a part and be regulated by the general permit, we'd have to make that notice requested by or before December 27th
Okay,
of 22.
okay, so you've got some time to
A
think.
little time, yeah.
Yeah.
But we're ready. We're
okay.
ready. And then I think we're good, Dave. I have just one other.
Well, on that item, can I ask
please.
that that be an agenda item for our next meeting so we can, we're
Sure.
kind of rushed here at the end. I'd like to hear more about it.
Sure. Definitely.
I just have if we're ended with the director's report, I just wanted to go back to Ender's Neck Hill for a minute.
Oh, yeah, please. I'm sorry.
Since other towns have used that, that process, the chip seal process, have they had problems that are similar to that? And or do they have solutions that we could apply to that problem on Ender's Neck Hill? They haven't. had that?
We haven't heard of those particular problems. There are people who are generally unhappy at the beginning with the amount of excess chips, but that's just a part of the process. In order to get the treatment all the way to the edge of the street, they have to put some extras. So it does get onto the grass and into driveways and so on, but there's some cleanup that's done.
Is the problem on Nurse Neck different than the other roads that you did using that technique?
It seems that the big difference is that uneven edge. Prior to putting in the treatment, the edges, there were uneven edges as described by the residents because of some of the washout because of runoff. The road is steep, so the runoff goes fast and erodes the edges. So you have some of that happening.
So it's different. It's worse here.
I
on this
would.
road than
Yeah,
the other
and,
roads.
and they're all a little different, which is why we try them in different places. So they're not all the same. The traffic pattern's different, the width of the road is different, so there's variables. But the concern that's being raised is really the edge of road.
Right.
That's a safety issue
Very
that
much.
we're hearing. The others is sort of is it going to improve or not? And that's to be determined.
So
but
is
the safety
solution
issue
to
is
wait and see right now?
No, so the condition of the road is a wait and see. I think the edge of the road, and I want engineering to evaluate this sooner rather than later to understand what can be done.
All right, so you guys are doing that right now.
From what I'm hearing, I think maybe general cleanup of the edges, picking up all of the excess material as much as we can get may help.
Okay. Thank you.
You have a comment?
A simple Google search will show that many people in many communities are unhappy with chip seal. So I didn't read very much, but I didn't feel alone in my concern.
One thing I wanted to point out, that there are two methods of chip seal. There's an old fashioned method where you lay the asphalt down and you just throw a lot of chips and you don't even sweep. You wait for the cars and everything to pound the chips in. The asphalt rubber is more of a newer technique where the chips are actually coated with asphalt rubber and those are rolled in and then you sweep up the excess, not just once or twice, but probably 3 times. So it's, there are two methods out there.
But it's on our radar to high alert on what we need to understand with this. There was some early work done to identify treatments. Obviously, my interest is what else is out there.
Sorry, just quickly, while I wouldn't object to cleaning up the chips, my observation is it's the gaps and the voids, places where chips aren't where you'd expect that they would be, that are creating the primary, hazard for people who are walking. I mean, the root stuff is very unpleasant, but really it's you think that it's going to be relative, and it's because it's such a uniform color, even during the day, you don't necessarily know you're about to step into one of these. And they're almost appear to be randomly placed. But thank you for your interest.
Thank you. Thank you. Anything else? Yes. Anything
I
else?
have one last thing, final sort of comment, just if we're done with the rest of the business.
Please, before we adjourn this.
Before we adjourn, just want to recognize, Anna, are you there? Did you go home, Anna?
Yes.
This is a test.
No,
Are you there? Can we-
I'm
can we
here.
See you. Can't see you.
Who's here?
Can we see you? Oh, there she is. I just wanted the commission to know that Anna is going to be retiring at the end of the month. However, this is over 24, 25 years. What is it,
Oh,
Anna?
come on now, Ellen. It's only 21.
All right, 21. I've been here that long. It seems like you've been here forever, and I've been here longer. That's scary. But the bottom line is Anna is obviously, as you know, instrumental as far as the coordination, with the, commission and keeping staff on track and trying to get these packets that you get delivered, on a monthly basis. Anna is the reason this all gets put together, assisting with, hybrid meetings and things like that. And we're really going to miss her. But on a positive note, Anna has agreed that, we're going to be saying, see you later, not goodbye. So with that, I'm hoping that you will see her later. And we're trying to figure out how to make that happen. But she's earned the retirement, and we're very pleased that we've had the opportunity to work with her for so long. But just wanted to recognize Anna before we adjourn.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I'm going to miss everybody. Thank you so
Great
much.
work. I didn't know you could retire at 49.
Exactly.
Oh, boy. You're on my fan club, I'll tell you.
Always trying. I move we adjourn. You make a motion to adjourn, and I need a second.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you for sticking around, and